typically, when a president goes abroad in a moment like this one, he goes with some deliverables. Anyone with any kind of interest in foreign diplomacy knows that a lot of this is orchestrated, and this is exactly what our next guest says. Here's the quote. Presidential trips are usually planned months in advance and are orchestrated down to the final detail. But this one, there is a bit more uncertainty. The author of that line, that quote, Isaac Boltansky, the Director of Policy Research at BTIC. Isaac, how strange is this to go to Europe in a moment like this one without deliverables?
It's abnormal, to say the least. I mean, these things, as you know, are usually planned down to the most minute detail, where the little flags go, and there are months of negotiations over the communiques that are produced. But this time is different, and the president is going in without as much normal planning as we've seen in the past, which adds some uncertainty. And I think that the biggest issue, at least for me, is what is this actually going to do to the overall negotiations, overall landscape, whether it's with Russia or the conversation regarding energy. And at the moment, given that there's no foreshadowing of what's coming out of there, I think there's some question for the investment community.
Isaac, we're all assuming there are no deliverables, of course. There might be something happening that we just haven't heard about. They might be planning for something. What we have seen over the last few weeks, in fact, the last few months, is when the vice president has gone on these trips to Europe, a lot of people have considered them to be a total failure because she's gone with no deliverables. Now, often when we have events like this, we talk about what does success look like. And I know it sounds cliche, but it's important. What is success for this president on this trip?
Yeah, look, this is statecraft at the highest level, and it's diplomacy in its purest form. And the way that I think about that is diplomacy is the art of letting someone else have your way, right? And I think that the president is going to Europe in the hopes of getting European countries to band together and show a unified front. And I think that that will come in really three forms. Number one is a reaffirmation of the commitment to NATO. And I think that that's one of the easier parts of this whole trip. That can come in the form of a speech and other commitments that I think we'll see right away. Then the second part is a European USA statement on China. Can they find key similar language regarding the stance on China's support of Russia? And can they warn China against actually supporting Russia either militarily or economically in a way that doesn't push China further into Russia's camp? And then the biggest one and the most difficult one, and the one that I don't think we're going to have an easy answer for, is energy. I don't think that there is a clean, clear win given some of the differing views over Russia's energy.
Isaac, how important will it be to gauge what the potential red lines are that Russia would cross and what the potential NATO response would be to those? And I'm thinking about chemical or biological weapons or, you know, as some people postulate, perhaps even down the line, nukes.
Yeah, look, I think that at least for this summit, they're going to avoid using red line commentary. I think that this is about building a multilateral, unified front around NATO, saying that NATO sovereign countries will have the support of all other NATO members. And frankly, I think they're going to avoid some of the more red line-esque rhetoric regarding certain levels of chemical weapon usage or weapons of mass destruction or even cyber warfare, because there hasn't been enough groundwork done yet on the diplomacy side to have definitive red lines like that. And that's part of the problem with going into meetings like this without the months of due diligence and planning and talks that are normal.
Isaac, how much leverage has the U.S. and its broader alliances lost for when they're trying to get the Kremlin to change its behavior by saying from the beginning, we will not be putting boots on the ground, that use of force is not on the table? Is it so much about what the West is willing to do or what it is not willing to do?
Yeah, look, I think one of the storylines here is that our limitations are going to be on display as well, right? We're going to hear a lot about unity and a concrete solidification of the NATO alliance in Article 5, and that's going to be very important. But I think we're also going to see clear and stark repose some of our limitations. And here I'm talking about a reaffirmation that we're not going to be part of the imposition of a no-fly zone, that we are going to remain cautious about transferring Soviet-era fighter jets, because the fear of escalation is part of the West's calculus here. President Biden and Europe and everyone who is in a position of power in the Western anti-war alliance is deeply concerned that if they go one step too far, there will be an escalation that will lead to World War III. And that has been part of the calculus from the beginning. It's going to remain part of the calculus, especially during this trip.